Welcome to Faith and Freedom 250, a special video series from the Herzog Foundation. As we approach America's 250th birthday, we're exploring the spiritual foundations that shaped our nation. Today's episode reveals how sweeping religious revival known as the Second Great Awakening helped inspire a wave of moral reform in the 19th century.
Some of the greatest social reform movements in American history can be traced back to the Second Great Awakening, a religious movement that swept the nation from the 1790s through the 1830s. What it meant to be an American was challenged, fought over, and redefined during and after this period. The Second Great Awakening ignited a fire in those seeking change, spiritually, socially, and politically. Many of the issues that rose to the surface during this time would take generations to resolve. Some weren't even settled until the 20th century, but the impact of the Second Great Awakening on American culture, it was permanent.
Like the First Great Awakening, the Second started in the churches. As the young nation expanded westward, it was Methodist and Baptist traveling preachers who led the charge across the frontier. They preached emotional conversion experiences and emphasized a direct, personal relationship with God, with no need for intermediaries. This idea that individuals could interact with God without institutional gatekeeping was both mentally and spiritually liberating, and it sparked grassroots movements that would reshape the American culture. Notable among those cultural alterations were the abolition of slavery, temperance movements, suffrage rights, as well as reforms in prisons and education.
By the mid-19th century, the abolition movement to free all those in slavery had become a powerful force. While not all abolitionists were evangelical Christians, many of them were fueled by the moral urgency unleashed during the Second Great Awakening. Books, plays, and newspapers carried that message farther and faster than ever before. The Liberator, an abolitionist newspaper published by William Lloyd Garrison for 30 years prior to the end of the Civil War, echoed the fire and brimstone language of the Second Great Awakening. Its moral calls to action, especially the call to end slavery, were impossible to ignore for many God-fearing Christians.
In 1852, Harriet Beecher Stowe, daughter of famed preacher Lyman Beecher, published Uncle Tom's Cabin. It exposed the cruelty of slavery and galvanized the abolitionists, providing a Christian cause to the end of the institution of slavery throughout the nation. Another major voice was Frederick Douglass, former slave, brilliant orator, and gifted writer. Though not an evangelical, Douglass often used the structure and language of revivalist preaching to move hearts and minds, sharing his own story of redemption in a way that resonated with the culture shaped by the Second Great Awakening.
But the Second Great Awakening didn't just influence abolition. It also sparked movements for equality among the sexes. In 1848, the Seneca Falls Convention put women's suffrage front and center. That fight wouldn't be won until 1920 with the 19th Amendment, but the spiritual foundations had been laid. Some early women's rights leaders like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony emerged in the wake of the Second Great Awakening, even if they were not part of it. They argued that if men and women could each have a personal relationship with God, then they should also enjoy equal rights on earth. Their work wasn't only political. For many, it was deeply spiritual.
The temperance movement was often championed by abolitionists and women suffragists. They believed alcohol was a root cause of society's moral decay. Several new denominations born out of the Second Great Awakening, including the Shakers, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the Seventh-day Adventists, required temperance from their members. Other Christian denominations which had flourished since the First Great Awakening, specifically the Baptists and Methodists, had long supported that movement as well.
Other reformers turned their attention to schools and prisons, two institutions rife with corruption and abuse in the mid-19th century. Inspired by the call to salvation, evangelical missionaries entered these spaces not only to share the gospel, but to lead others into personal relationships with Christ. Motivated by a sense of moral responsibility, they brought biblical conviction to efforts that aimed to restore dignity, order, and moral purpose.
On the national stage, the Second Great Awakening gave many Americans the strong conviction that faith should drive public action. The settlement of the West was framed as manifest destiny, a Christian nation's divine right to expand and control the continent, and a duty to evangelize the indigenous people residing there. President Abraham Lincoln used strong religious language and biblical texts to make a moral case in the struggle to preserve the Union and to end slavery in the United States.
And on a personal level, the message was clear. Eternal salvation was available to everyone, regardless of wealth, education, or social status. Rich or poor, slave or free, every soul mattered. That belief was revolutionary then, and it's still powerful today.
The Second Great Awakening wasn't just a moment in time. It was a moment that changed hearts, culture, and the moral direction of the country. At the Herzog Foundation, we believe that understanding this spiritual legacy is essential to preserving the freedom that it inspired. To learn more or watch additional episodes of Faith and Freedom 250, visit herzogfoundation.com. Thanks for watching.